Hello, my friend. Today I will tell you another long-forgotten legend. Close your eyes and let the magic transport you to Middle-earth. Our journey begins in the ancient hush before the shaping of the world. When the stars hung heavy over the sleeping earth and time moved like slow water beneath the sky, there was a silence that stretched from the peak of Tenedal to the farthest corners of the void. It was a silence not of peace, but of waiting, a breath held by the very bones of the world, as if Arda itself feared to stir. And in that silence, beneath the frozen north, where starlight rarely touched and even the winds were hushed, there lay a fortress carved into the very marrow of the mountains. It was Utumno, black-walled and deathless, the first throne of Melkor, he who would become Morgoth, the master of shadows and father of lies. A bastion of cold and cruelty, it coiled deep into the earth like a wound that would never heal. Here, in that terrible darkness, things were made that ought never to be. The mountains echoed with the clang of iron, the screams of creation twisted to torment. Morgoth, once the mightiest of the Auror, had taken to his service fire and fear and fury. In the bowels of Utumno, he bred his legions, spirits wrapped in flame, beasts with eyes of red glass, creatures whose names were never spoken again. And above them all he set his captains, chief among them Gothmog, the first Brog, who bore a crown of cinders and whose footsteps cracked the earth. But the world beyond was not forgotten. Far to the west, beyond the encircling sea, in the lands of Aman, the Valar, those guardians of watched with sorrow and mounting dread. For they had come into the world to shape and to bless, not to destroy. Yet destruction had taken root in its first shadow, and the light of the stars no longer reached all corners of the newborn earth. And so they gathered, not in haste, but in purpose, upon the plains of Valinor, beneath the gaze of the two trees. There their voices rose, not in song, but in solemn counsel, as if the very act of preparing for war against one of their own was a grief too great to be borne. Among them stood Main, lord of the breath of Arda, his eyes as blue and deep as the high air above the mountains. And beside him, Varda, she who kindled the stars, her presence like moonlight on untouched snow. There was Ulmo, clad in robes of tide and storm, silent and watchful. Orm, the huntsman of the Valar, whose spears sang with the wind, and Yavanna, who weeps for every tree that falls. And there was Vána, ever youthful, her laughter once the herald of spring, now quiet as she watched her Maia prepare for the darkness. Elen was her name, not a warrior, not a herald, but a keeper of things delicate and fading, of memories, of songs not yet sung, of light not yet kindled. Tall and slender as a white birch, she walked with the calm of moonrise over still water. The other Maiar spoke of her voice as one that lingered in dreams. Her presence is that of a blooming flower in the midst of ruin. She was not sent to conquer, nor to destroy. Elin's purpose was gentler, stranger. She was sent to remember. For war, the Valar knew, is not only fire and death. It is forgetting. And some things must be remembered, even in the dark. And so it was that when the hosts of the west rose, armored in starlight, banners aloft beneath the skies, they were not only swords and shields, but voices and songs. They marched with fire in their eyes and mourning in their hearts. Beneath banners that glimmered like the light of lost stars, they crossed the sea, not by ship, but by will and power. For the wrath of the Valar does not sail, it walks. The hosts stretched as far as sight could carry. Vonyar, firstborn of the elves, shining with the light of a man upon their brows. The Nulor, proud and grim, bearing blades whose names were already stories. And the Maiar, lesser spirits of flame and song, now clad in armor wrought from the very substance of the heavens. At their heart, robed in silver and pale gold, walked Elenwë. No helm crowned her brow, no blade hung at her side. She carried instead a staff of ashwood carved with the names of the stars in the language of the Aor, and upon her shoulders flowed a mantle like falling snow. She did not sing as the others did. Her voice was kept silent, for it was meant not for war, but for remembrance. As they neared the dark lands, the light of the stars seemed to waver. The sky, once sharp with constellations, grew dim as though a shroud had been drawn across the heavens. The earth grew harder beneath their feet, cracked and bitter with old sorrows. Trees stood dead, their branches like grasping hands, and rivers ran thick with ash. Then came the wind. It came howling from the north, cold and sharp as knives, bearing the taste of iron and fire. The banners of the Valar bent beneath its force, and the elves grew silent. The land itself seemed to cry out in warning. They had reached the shadow of Utumno. It was not a place, Ellen thought, but a wound in the world, a hole torn in the weave of Arda, through which light itself had bled and fled. The fortress did not rise above the earth, but sank into it as if the darkness wished to devour itself. Great gates of black stone loomed, silent and shut, and before them stretched plains of broken glass and frozen bone. There they camped, and there they waited. The siege would begin at dawn, though in that place dawn was but a memory, a word without meaning. Time, like all things, bent around. Days passed like smoke, nights lasted for lifetimes, but the hosts endured, and Ellen walked among them. She passed through the camps silent and gentle, her touch a balm to those who could not sleep. She listened to their stories, the Nulor who remembered the light of the trees, the Vanar who missed the scent of mountain air. She wrote their names upon her staff with her thoughts, carving them into memory with each step. And sometimes, when the silence grew too deep, she sang. Not words of battle, but lullabies from before the world was made. Songs of starlight in the sea, and in the deep places of Utumno. Something stirred. Gothmog, the Lord of Balrogs, stood in the shadowed halls beside his master's throne. His eyes, once golden and kind, now burned with red fire, and his form was wrapped in flame that hissed and wept like tortured air. He felt the presence of the Valar, as one might feel the approach of a storm. And deeper still, Morgoth waited, not idle, not afraid, but watchful. He had known they would come, though not so soon, not so strong. And in his pride he smiled, for the gates of Utumno had never been broken. And beneath the weight of the earth, the drums began to sound. Boom, boom, boom. The siege had not yet begun, but the world already trembled. And Elenwë, watching the stars fade one by one from the sky, whispered a single thought into the wind. Let there still be something left to remember. The camp stretched like a tapestry woven in starlight and shadow, its tents rising in quiet order across the frost-bitten plain that breathed with ancient grief. Fires flickered gently amid the dusk, their light pooling around silver helms and glinting blades. Yet their warmth could not banish the chill that lived in the marrow of that place. Even the flames themselves, usually bold companions in the deep of night, seemed hesitant here, shivering with each gust of wind, sputtering as though reluctant to rise against the darkness that loomed just beyond the edge of sight. And the darkness, oh, how it watched. The land was not dead, but dreaming darkly, like some ancient beast that had sunk into troubled slumber. Teeth bared beneath the snow. The air carried with it a strange weight, a pressure that made breathing an act of subtle defiance, as if even the wind itself had grown weary of drawing breath in a world where hope stood uncertain. Elenwë walked the paths between the fires like a wraith spun from silver mist, her pale mantle trailing behind her like a whisper of snowfall in a forgotten wood. The earth beneath her steps did not crunch or crack, but seemed to hold its breath, as if the land knew her tread and grieved at its necessity. Her face, framed by hair like moonlight draped across silk, bore no expression of fear. And yet her eyes, deep wells of starlit sorrow, betrayed the truth, that she was not untouched by dread, only tempered by the knowledge of deeper grief. She paused at the edge of one circle of fire, where a company of Valar rested with their spears planted in the earth like saplings reaching for lost constellations. One among them, a young captain whose name was Lirian, sat with his helm in his lap, polishing its golden surface, though his eyes did not see the work. His gaze was fixed on the sky, where the stars were vanishing one by one behind a slowly advancing veil of cloud, as though the heavens themselves were turning their faces away from what was to come. Elenwë lowered herself beside him without a word. The silence between them stretched long and soft like the pause before a snowfall. Then in a voice quiet but clear, Lirian spoke. "I once thought the stars eternal," he murmured, the polished cloth falling still in his hands. "I believed that their light, distant though it is, would never yield to shadow. But now I see how even starlight can falter, how it can be consumed not by fire, but by silence." Elenwë tilted her head slightly, studying him not with pity, but with the gravity of one who had heard this truth spoken in many tongues across many ages. "The stars are not lost," she said, her voice like the hush of a temple at midnight. "They retreat, yes, but only so that we might learn the shape of darkness and understand more fully why we must hold the light." Lion's eyes flicked toward her, uncertain. "And what if the darkness teaches us only of fear? What if in learning its shape, we become shaped by it in turn?" He turned the helm in his hands as if searching for some reflection within its curve, some vision of the self he feared might be lost. What if the light we carry is not enough? Elenwë did not answer at once. Her gaze drifted to the horizon, where Utumno's shadows stretched long and cold, drinking the warmth from the world. "Then we walk into the dark," she said finally, "not because we are sure of victory, but because not to walk would be to forsake the very thing we are made of." Light is not certainty, Leanne. It is the choice to be kind in a cruel place. It is the voice that sings when silence demands surrender. It is the hand that reaches even when it knows it may be burned. Lion's hands clenched gently around the rim of his helm. "You speak of mercy," he said, and the word caught in his throat like a thorn. "Do you believe mercy has a place here, where we go?" Elenwë turned back to him, and her expression was not soft, but fiercely compassionate, like the sun rising after a long night. "Mercy is not weakness," she said. "It is the strength to see the soul behind the sword. Even in Utumno, in the deepest pit of Morgoth's madness, there are those who once sang beside us in the music. They have forgotten, but that does not mean they are beyond remembering. The fire between them flared, casting tall shadows that danced like lost spirits. Around them, others listened, silently drawn into the quiet depth of their exchange. The night seemed to lean closer, attentive. Lion looked again to the sky, but now his gaze was not filled with sorrow. It was searching, questioning. Do you truly believe Morgoth himself remembers the music? Elenwë closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they gleamed with ancient mourning. He remembers, she said, but he hates what he remembers. He hides from it, lashes out at it because it wounds him more deeply than any blade ever could. For even Morgoth, who was once Melkor, cannot entirely silence the harmony he was born from. That is the nature of evil. It does not create, it corrupts. And even corruption mourns the loss of what it once was. Lirien's voice trembled, though he did not know why. Then is this war not just to defeat him, but to mourn him as well? And Elenwë, gentle and unflinching, nodded. Across the camp, the wind stirred again, lifting the edges of tents and playing through the hair of sleeping warriors. The earth groaned faintly beneath them, a sound like breath caught in the throat of the world. From the distant peaks, where Utumno lay buried, came a rumble not of war, not yet, but of awareness. They were seen. Elenwë rose, and Lirien stood with her. The fire crackled softly between them, casting halos of light that flickered like memories barely held. As she walked onward through the stillness, others stepped aside, not in deference, but in quiet reverence, as though they too felt the tremor in the air, the gathering of fate around her slender form. She passed by a stream that had once been a river, now reduced to a slow trickle beneath a crust of frost. The ice cracked underfoot like old bones, and the water beneath murmured faintly, as though trying to speak but lacking the strength. Elenwë paused, crouching to touch the edge of the flow. Cold leapt up her fingers, but she did not pull away. "There is pain in the land," she whispered, though no one was near. "And pain does not fade when ignored. It coils inward, becomes poison. This land is sick with grief, and grief longs to be witnessed." She closed her eyes and placed her hand flat on the earth. The wind fell silent. The stars blinked out one by one. Then from the black sky above, a single note sang out, clear, high, and unbearably mournful. A cry not from any throat, but from the world itself. The others felt it, heard it, turned toward it with wide eyes in sudden stillness. And Elenwë, rising slowly to her feet, turned north. The gates of Utumno had begun to open, not wide, not yet, but the stone trembled. A breath escaped the deep, and with it came a scent. Ash, iron, and old, old sorrow. The siege would begin with mourning and with memory, but the end would belong to the stars, whether they burned in the sky or only in the hearts of those who dared to remember what it meant to be whole. Dawn did not come with light. In that forsaken plain beneath the looming specter of Utumno, the turning of night into day was not marked by the lifting of shadow, but by the shift in the air, a subtle, uneasy trembling, like a sigh from something old and long buried, roused not from sleep, but from watchfulness. There was no sunrise here, only a paling of the sky, a dim silver hue that hung low over the horizon like a faded memory of morning. The ghost of a world where warmth once grew from the soil and the heavens smiled down with a generous hand. But here, in the Northlands of the world's youth, the sky was no friend. It crouched overhead like a beast awaiting command, its great gray belly roaring with cloud and the scent of old stone and spent thunder. The land itself seemed unwilling to move. Hills remained hunched and frozen, as though they feared to draw attention to their quiet existence. The grasses, sparse and brittle as spun glass, did not sway, but stood motionless, sharp against the windless air. Even the campfires of the host crackled without joy, their embers sinking low into their own ash, curling inwards like fists closed around fading warmth. The host of the Valar, arrayed in its strength, appeared not as an army ready to storm the gates of evil, but as a vast funeral procession, solemn, slow-breathing, burdened not by fear, but by the gravity of what lay ahead. Each warrior, whether elf, Maia, or spirit of lesser kind, stood wrapped in thought deeper than speech, cloaked not only in armor, but in silence. And in that stillness, there was something sacred, the kind of sacredness that belongs not to temples or crowns, but to things like mourning and memory, to the ache of a world preparing to sacrifice its light, not in surrender, but in testament. Elenwë stood upon a low rise just beyond the nearest circle of tents, her cloak billowing not with wind, for there was none, but with the quiet motion of her own breath, a slow and steady rhythm that she had long since mastered around her. The land was draped in frost, every stone rimmed with a pale gleam that did not sparkle, but dulled as though light itself had grown reluctant to take shape. Her eyes, luminous beneath a silver hood, swept the fields before Utumno's gates, and though her expression was calm, within her there stirred 1,000 small storms. Memories and fears, hopes not extinguished, but flickering like coals beneath ash. She could feel the fortress watching, not with eyes, but with presence, like a mouth just before it speaks, or a wound before it begins to ache. She was not alone long. A soft footfall behind her broke the silence, though it was not a sound so much as the suggestion of one, like a feather brushing silk. She did not turn, for she knew who approached. It was Eonar, Maia of Urma, clad in robes the color of deep moss and moonlit stone, his face lined with kindness and sorrow in equal measure. His voice, when it came, was slow and deep, like a stream moving through a cave where light dared not tread. "You do not sleep," he said, though it was not a question. Ellen tilted her head but kept her eyes on the horizon. "The land does not sleep," she replied softly, "and the sky has forgotten." How stepped beside her, his gaze following hers toward the jagged line where earth met fortress wall. Autumn was not a citadel built of logic or symmetry. It was not the proud, inspired beauty of the elves, nor the solid dignity of dwarven craft. It was a wound torn open and left to fester, a place that seemed to bleed shadow even in stillness. Its towers were not towers, but claws grasping at the low sky. Its gates were not doors, but mouths, frozen mid-snarl. And though the siege had not yet begun, the silence it projected was not passive. It was a silence that challenged, that dared the world to speak first. "It will not be a swift war," Eonar murmured. "Not even for us." "No war worth fighting ever is," Ella replied. "And this is more than war. It is reckoning, not just for Melkor, but for all of us." Guanar's brow furrowed faintly. "Do you believe we share in his guilt?" She turned to him then, her eyes reflecting not accusation, but the ache of long thought. Not guilt, but responsibility. We were all born of the same song, Eon Onar. Even Melkor, he is not an intruder in the music. He is a note turned wrong, a harmony twisted by pride. But if the song falters, does not every voice have some part to play in restoring its tune? Onar was quiet, and the air between them felt thick, not with argument, but with the heaviness of truth half understood. He looked down, his hand brushing the frost-laced grass at his feet. "And if the note cannot be corrected," then she said, her voice distant, as if speaking to the stars, "we sing around it, not to erase it, but to contain it. Even dissonance has its place, though it is rarely gentle." There was a pause filled with nothing but the sound of their breath in the cold. Then Iwenar spoke again more softly. "You will go to the front." She nodded. "When the time comes, but not with sword nor shield. My place is not to fight, but to remember what we fight for." He glanced at her, troubled. "And if what we fight for is lost in the fighting?" Her smile, when it came, was sad but resolute. "Then I will carry it, even if it is only in word, in song, in memory. That is what it means to be witness." Eonor said no more. He bowed his head, not in deference, but in understanding, an acknowledgement that her burden, though less visible, was no lighter than his own. And then he left her, as the first true sound from Utumno drifted across the field like smoke on still air. It was not a horn, nor a cry, but a groan, deep, tremulous, like mountains grinding against one another beneath the earth. It vibrated in the bones, not the ears, and the land shivered as if the echo of it reached back through time to the hour when Arda was first born from thought and light and flame. Warriors rose from their rest, eyes turning northward, fires guttered as if cowed by the sound, and somewhere in the heart of the host, an ancient harp string snapped from tension. Elenwë stood unmoving, but within her, her heart whispered a name she had not spoken aloud for long years. Gothmog. Once he had walked the golden gardens of Lorien beside her, silent and sharp-eyed, always asking questions that tangled like roots beneath the surface of the world. He had spoken in paradoxes, loved in riddles, believed in fire, not as destruction, but as cleansing. He had sung once, too, only once, but she remembered the tone of it, harsh and hollow, like wind through winter boughs. And when he fell, when he turned from song to shadow, it was not because he hated the light, but because he had grown to resent the pain of longing for it. Now he was fire made flesh, commander of Balrogs, lord of flame. But she remembered the Maia beneath the embered skin, and she wondered if he remembered her. The gates of Utumno were opening, and memory would soon walk into war. And then the gates of Utumno yawned wide, not with the sudden violence of shattering stone or the deafening roar of sundered metal, but with a sound that was far more dreadful in its restraint. A slow, yawning creak, like the groan of an ancient glacier shifting its weight after long centuries of stillness. It was the sound of something that had not moved in ages, not because it could not, but because it had chosen not to. Until now. The black stone parted as if peeled back by unseen hands, revealing nothing behind it but an abyss, a darkness so total it felt less like the absence of light and more like the presence of something older, deeper, a thing that had never known illumination, had never desired it, and now uncoiled like smoke made flesh into the shivering dawn. The light faltered, not visibly, not yet, but the very air seemed to recoil as shadows spilled outward, not rushing, but spreading in slow rivulets across the plains. Tendrils that reached like half-remembered fears, creeping across the floor of a dream. The land responded with quiet dread. Frost patterns curled in unnatural spirals upon the rocks. The grasses blackened as if burned from within, and the trees, what few skeletal remnants remained, shuddered without wind, their branches clacking together in a music of warning and despair. A scent rose with the darkness, subtle but unignorable, the smell of iron and cinders, of old oil, and, deeper still, the scent of forgotten places, stale tombs and buried regret. Vani felt it enter her lungs and settle there, a taste like bitterness soaked in memory. She stood still, her breath shallow, not from fear of death, for death to her was not the end, but from an instinct older than breath itself, the kind that whispered of a deeper danger, the death of meaning, the erosion of the soul's memory. This was not simply evil. It was the manifestation of despair, of the absence of all song, all hope, all remembrance. A sound rose from the pit, not a war cry nor a scream, but a voice, low, sonorous, impossibly deep. It was not spoken in any tongue that belonged to the elves or the Valar, nor even in the black speech of later days. It was older, deeper, made not for ears, but for the marrow, for the echoing caverns of the heart, where fear nestles and breathes in silence. It said, "I see you, not with malice, but with hunger." It said, "I remember you, not as a friend remembers, but as fire remembers." And then they emerged. Those who had once walked among the auror in the days before the world took form, now wrapped in shadow and bound in flame. Balrogs, spirits of fire, turned against their origin, stepped forth like a funeral procession led by hatred. Their bodies radiated heat, not like the sun, but like furnaces buried in the earth, forgotten and angry at the forgetting. Their whips cracked in the air, not as weapons, but as extensions of their will, slicing through light and thought alike. And at their head came Gotham. He did not stride like a king, nor march like a general. He drifted, his steps soundless on the blackened ground, his great mantle of fire trailing behind him like a comet's tail of ruin. His face was not hidden, but neither was it entirely revealed. His eyes were pits of dull flame, not bright, but smoldering, like coals that had burned so long they no longer knew they had once been kindled by light. And his mouth was the most terrible of all, not because of its fangs or its snarl, but because it was calm, too calm. The calm of someone who had long since stopped believing in redemption and had learned instead to take comfort in ruin. And Leni stepped forward, not lashly, not with bravado, but with the deliberate grace of a falling leaf that has chosen its path, knowing it cannot alter the wind. The host of the Valar stirred behind her, not in protest, but in silent respect, for they knew she did not go to fight, she went to speak. She stopped a dozen paces from the line of fire where the air rippled with heat and memory. Her voice, when she spoke, was like a bell beneath the sea, soft, clear, and made to reach across impossible depths. "Gothmog," she said. No title, no accusation, just the name. He did not answer at first, though he turned toward her. The heat of his gaze did not burn, but it pressed like the weight of time, the burden of history, the ache of something that had once been music, now rendered to ash. "You wear that name," he said, and his voice was not cruel, but tired. So tired it cracked like dry bark. "But do you understand it?" She did not flinch. "I remember it," she said. "I remember you, Marin of Flame, who danced once in the gardens of Lorien when the winds first learned to carry scent." At that, something flickered in him. Not emotion, not exactly, but a hesitation, a fracture in the armor of forgetfulness. He took one step forward, and the ground blackened where his foot fell. His voice lowered, rougher, more intimate. "You remember too much, Elenwë. Memory is a chain, not a torch. It binds us to what we were, even when what we were cannot survive what we have become." She nodded slowly, her gaze never wavering. "Yes, but memory is also the root of meaning. It is what keeps the soul from drifting into shadow. Without memory, we are not free. We are lost." He laughed then, low and bitter like water running through bones. "You speak of souls as if they still matter in this place, as if anything does. This is not Aman. This is not the place of trees and song. This is the broken edge of the world, Ellen. And you have brought light into a place where light is hated. Why? What do you think you will change?" She stepped one pace closer, and the air between them hissed as ice met fire. "Not change," she said softly, "but remind." And here her voice took on a new tone, deeper, sadder, imbued with a grace that even Gothmog could not look away from. "You once sang. Do you remember that? Not for war, not for power, but for beauty. You sang to the stars, not to command them, but to listen. You walked not to conquer, but to understand. That being still exists beneath the ruin, beneath the rage. You were not born to destroy Gothmog. You were born to create, and I see the part of you that remembers that." He was silent. Utumno loomed behind him, the pit of shadow yawning wider, and the Balrogs shifted uneasily, not at threat, but at uncertainty. And in that silence, Elenwë felt a tremor, not in the earth, but in him. A flicker of memory sharp as pain. "I remember the stars," he whispered. Just that, just those words. And then the fire surged, not in rage, in refusal. The fire within him flared high, as if to drown that memory before it could rise again, before it could become a seed. His voice returned, louder, harsher. "But memory is not forgiveness, and light cannot live here." Elenwë bowed her head. "Then I will stay, even if I must burn, because someone must remember." And as the first volley of flame arched into the air from the fortress walls, as the host cried out and rose to arms, as war spilled into the dawn like blood into snow, she stood still, the last quiet place in a world coming undone. And she remembered the battle did not erupt. It unfolded slowly, solemnly, like a dirge rendered in motion, not sudden or shrill, but heavy, deliberate, filled with the mournful cadence of inevitability. The first volleys of flame arced through the dim sky like meteors fallen from forgotten constellations, not so much aimed as loosed in grief. Each flare of crimson light bore with it the heat of anger, yes, but beneath that anger lingered a deeper, more mournful truth. This was not merely a war of conquest, nor even of justice. It was a war of memory, of broken kinship, of music lost to dissonance. The plains before Utumno cracked and steamed beneath the meeting of light and shadow. Ice hissed into vapor beneath feet that had not touched the world in ages, and the earth moaned as if the bones of forgotten mountains were stirring, awakened by the echoes of an old betrayal. The sky, pale and sickly, seemed to pulse with the clash, its heavy clouds thick with ash, not from fire alone, but from the breath of beings who had long since abandoned breath in any mortal sense. Elenwë stood still as the world tore itself open around her, her cloak catching the rising wind like the tattered remnant of a banner borne through ages of sorrow. Her eyes, silver, ancient, unwavering, did not close, though the air seethed with heat and ruin. She did not raise a hand to shield herself. To do so would have been to flinch not from fire, but from truth. And she would not grant that victory, not even to grief itself. Around her the host surged. The Vanor, radiant even beneath the dim light, moved like a wave cresting the shore. Silent and somber, their spears held not in wrath, but in lament. The new Lord followed, iron bright and mournful, their blades carved with the runes of their ancestors, their faces pale with resolve. Even the Maiar moved, not as gods, but as shadows that remembered light, their steps burdened not with doubt, but with the weight of what must be done. And yet Elenwë did not move with them. Her place was different. She did not bear a blade. She carried instead the memory of names, the lineage of songs, the burden of those who had once walked beside the fire, and now stood opposite it. Her hand rested upon the staff carved with the stars, not as a weapon, but as a thread, linking her to what had been, to what might yet be again. She turned slowly, and there stood Lion once more. His armor was marked now with the soot of flame and the blood of kin, and his face bore the strain of decision, lines drawn not by age, but by the rapid passing of innocence. He had not spoken since the first clash, but now, seeing her still and untouched amid the chaos, something within him stirred and broke free, and his voice trembled as he stepped toward her. "Why do you remain here?" he asked, not with accusation, but with sorrow too vast to conceal. "Do you not see what is happening? The line falters, the enemy presses, even the stars, they flicker." She turned her gaze upon him, and for a long breath she said nothing. When she spoke, her words were low and slow, each syllable chosen as though it bore the weight of memory itself. "I remain," she said, "because in war there must be a place where peace is remembered, not as a thing to be reclaimed, but as a truth that still exists, even if only in the shadow of fire." Lion frowned, shaking his head. "But peace is lost here. What good is remembering when the world itself forgets? When it is remade in violence and flame." She stepped toward him, her voice like the first raindrop upon dry stone. "Because remembrance is resistance, not to the enemy, but to despair. Every war is fought not only for land or power, but for the meaning we give to the world. If we forget what we are fighting for, we become nothing but fire ourselves." He looked away then toward the field where the silhouettes of flame-wreathed foes loomed and danced with horror. The Balrogs moved not like beasts, but like thoughts made manifest. Thoughts of vengeance, of regret, of rage that had forgotten its source. And Gothmog. Gothmog still stood still, not yet joined to the slaughter, but watching her. "And if they do not remember?" Lirian asked at last, his voice softer now, touched with despair. "If there is no light in them to reach, what then?" Elenwë lowered her eyes. "Then I will be their witness. I will carry what they have lost, even if it is only grief, even if it is only ashes. Someone must." A silence fell then, deep and still, as though even the storm held its breath. And Lion, despite the heat that scorched the air and the sound of steel against fire not far beyond, felt cold. He touched her shoulder, not to comfort, but to ground himself in something that had not yet burned. "You remind me," he said quietly, "of the trees." She smiled. It was not a bright smile, but it was whole. "I was born beneath their light," she whispered, "and I carry it still, even if only as memory. That is enough." Behind them, a sudden tremor split the ground, and from it rose a tower of smoke shot through with flame. A host of spirits twisted through the air like wounded songbirds, fleeing, wailing, or simply ceasing to be. The war was not advancing, it was consuming, and still Elenwë did not move. She raised her staff and held it before her, not in defiance, but in declaration. The stars carved into it began to shimmer softly, barely perceptibly, like echoes of a light too ancient to burn in the sky, but still present in the bones of the earth. And in the darkness beyond, Gothmog saw. And for the first time in many ages, he hesitated. He remembered. He did not want to, but memory once awakened is a stubborn flame. The battlefield, if it could be called such a thing, was no longer a place defined by space or direction. The land itself had begun to unravel beneath the weight of the conflict, as though the fabric of Arda strained to hold together its memory of form. North no longer felt distinct from east. Light no longer clearly separated itself from shadow. Flame and frost swirled in the same breath, the air thick with conflicting opposites, warmth that burned, cold that seared, silence that screamed. The earth writhed beneath the tread of powers that were not born to war, but had descended to it out of terrible necessity. Valleys opened like mouths in the ground, not carved by geological time, but torn under by grief too vast for containment. Above the sky hung like a bruise across the heavens, a thing swollen and deepening, soaked in the wounds of light long extinguished. Clouds pressed low like a shroud drawn taut over a dying body, and the stars, those distant memories of joy, had dimmed to pinpricks barely visible through the mist. There was no sun. There had not been a sun in this land since the first music was broken by Melor's disharmony, and no dawn had ever dared to rise over the gates of Utumno. The only illumination came from fire, red and furious, licking skyward from Balrog whips, or from the silent halos that ring the blades of the Valar's host. Halos that did not shine, but glowed like moonlight trapped in memory. And within this chaos, this folding and unfolding of time and matter, Elenwë walked as one might walk through a dream that is turned to nightmare, yet still retains its original fragrance. The scent of her memories was on the wind, unseen, yet unmistakably present. She did not run. she did not raise her voice, but where she passed, the very air seemed to pause. The darkness, even in its fury, did not engulf her. It bent around her presence, confused, as though remembering some ancient promise it had once made to never harm her. She moved like silence given form, like sorrow that had learned not to collapse beneath its own weight. And behind her, someone followed, not stealthily, nor in secrecy, but with the tentative gait of one uncertain whether he was waking from a dream or stepping deeper into it. Gothmog, once known by another name, a name he had not dared let pass his lips for an age, drifted behind her, his great body wrapped in flame, though it no longer roared with the same violence. It smoldered, now pulsing softly, as though the fire had forgotten its hatred for a moment, and remembered instead the warmth of hearths, of forges shaped by joy rather than dominance. He did not call to her, not yet, for the moment required more than speech. It demanded contemplation, that rarest of acts in a creature of fire and wrath. His eyes, coals deep and hollow, narrowed as he watched her pause by a fallen Vána, whose pale hands still gripped a harp rather than a blade. She knelt, brushing soot from the elf's brow, and whispered something he could not hear, and the flame within him flickered. Then at last he spoke, though his voice was no more than a rustling of embers, a sigh caught in the ribs of a mountain. "Why do you not fear me?" Her reply came after a long silence, and when it did, it was spoken not with boldness, but with a gentle clarity that cut through the ash like spring through snow. "Because I know what you were." He laughed then, but it was not the laugh of mockery. It was hollow, bewildered, like a man who finds himself alone in a hall once filled with laughter and cannot recall why the silence has settled so thickly. "What I was is no longer. The one you remember was devoured long ago in the furnace of his own failure. What remains is only fire." She stood and turned to face him fully. Her gaze was not reproachful nor pleading. It was steady and it was full. A mirror not of his flames, but of the reflection he had long denied himself. "Even fire," she said, "remembers the warmth of its first spark. You have tried to burn that memory away, but you are still bound by it. That is why you follow me." Gothmog said nothing. The wind picked up around them then, not a gale, but a breath, warm and low, scented not with the smoke of war, but with pine and the faintest trace of night-blooming flowers. It was as though in this narrow corridor between destruction and silence, the world itself inhaled the moment, preserving it before the fire could consume it. "I followed you once," he said at last, "in the gardens of Urmo. You sang beside the pools, and I listened, not because the song was beautiful, though it was, but because I could not bear the thought of a world where such a voice could be ignored." Venu's lips parted, and her reply came softly, like a dream remembered just before waking. "I remember," she said. "You stood at the edge of the glade, hands still black with soot from your forge. But your eyes were clear then. You did not yet believe that power must come from pain." He looked away, for her words struck something buried. He had not heard his own name spoken without venom in an age. He had not seen eyes look upon him without fear or hatred. And though part of him recoiled instinctively, reflexively, another part, long forgotten, leaned toward that memory like a coal drawn toward oxygen. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "You know I will not turn. You know the shadow behind me is greater than the flame around me. You speak of peace, but peace is lost, and mercy is weakness." "No," she answered, taking one step closer, unflinching. "Mercy is the strength to see the soul inside the wound." It is the quiet defiance of the one who will not allow despair to speak the final word. You call yourself lost, but you are here. You followed me not because you seek victory, but because you are tired of burning. He trembled, not visibly, not with limbs or fire, but in spirit, like a dam strained to the point of cracking beneath the weight of its own silence. "I have done terrible things," he said, and it was the first time he had spoken the words aloud. "Yes," she replied, "and you will answer for them. But answering is not the same as vanishing. Remorse is not an eraser. It is the beginning of something new." Gothmog did not answer, but the fire around him dimmed further, and for the first time since the war had begun, a Balrog lowered its weapon. The plains before Utumno had transformed into a strange theater of stillness amidst chaos, a pocket of breath in the lungs of battle, as if the world, in witnessing the quiet exchange between flame and memory, had forgotten how to exhale. The clash of swords, the deep toll of war drums echoing through the hills, the shuddering cries of spirits both fallen and triumphant. They all seemed to grow distant, hushed, blurred into the margins of this strange moment. The very air was holding something, an anticipation, a tremor, not of fear, but of recognition. Like the silence that descends before the soft toll of a bell whose chime has not sounded in many ages. Around Elenwë and Gothmog, the landscape itself seemed to breathe differently. The frost that had clung to every stone, every brittle blade of grass, had begun to melt, not swiftly but gently, as if in reverence, as if warmed not by sun or fire, but by the long-forgotten memory of morning dew. The ground, once cracked and blackened by centuries of sorrow, now lay open like a page in an ancient book, willing again to receive footprints that were not made in wrath. The sky, though still iron-hued and heavy with cloud, allowed a single shaft of thin silver light to break through, an anomaly perhaps, or the whisper of something deeper, a light not of the heavens, but of healing. And within that light stood Elenwë. She was not radiant in the way the warriors of the West were, clad in armor etched with starlight. Her power did not roar, it resonated. Her presence was a quiet music, a song composed not in triumph, but in mourning. And yet it moved through the space around her like incense drifting through the rafters of a temple. She stood with her staff held not in defense, but as a conductor might hold a baton when calling forth the first note of a requiem. Her eyes remained locked with Gothmog's, and in their depths lived a tenderness that neither denied his deeds nor diminished his suffering. It simply was like the sea, like time. Gothmog, though still draped in coils of heat and flickering shadow, though his body remained a pea of old anger and fear, did not move. His weapon, an immense and jagged lash of molten flame, no longer crackled with urgency. It hung loose in his hand like an afterthought, a symbol of what he had once believed strength to be. Around him, the other Balrogs had slowed in their fury, sensing something beyond comprehension. They were not afraid, not yet, but they were confused, and that confusion was more dangerous to the shadow than fear had ever been. "Why do you persist?" he asked at last, his voice low, raw, like wind through a canyon scorched long ago by lightning. Why speak to me as though I am not already fallen beyond healing? As though your words can reach a place in me that has long since burned away. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she walked a step closer, and the earth did not recoil beneath her feet. The ground held her gently, like an old friend relearning the shape of her tread. When she spoke, it was with the grace of a prayer. "Because I do not believe anything sacred is ever truly lost," she said. "Not to time, not even to fire." Her voice trembled slightly at the end, not from fear, but from the deep strain of hope. A kind of aching hope that had nothing to do with victory and everything to do with the belief that even ruin can remember beauty. She looked at him, not at the flames, not at the twisted ruin of his form, but at the being behind the heat, at the soul that still glimmered like a dying coal beneath a mountain of ash. "I have seen the things you have done," she continued, her words slower now, each one dipped in the weight of memory. "The cities burned, the towers shattered, the cries that rose like smoke over lands that once sang. I do not deny any of it. I do not pretend that the blood on your hands can be washed away by words. But neither do I forget that once, long ago, you crafted light from flame, not as a weapon, but as an offering. I remember the forge you built in Valinor's dawn. I remember the way you shaped glass into vessels to catch starlight." Gothmog flinched, not visibly but in spirit, as though her words struck a fault line in his soul. "I shattered those things," he said bitterly, turning his gaze downward, as though afraid her eyes might reflect something in him he had tried for too long to bury. "I betrayed the hands that gave me purpose. I turned creation into cruelty. Whatever I was is dust now, scattered in the fire I chose over mercy." Elenwë stepped yet closer until they stood but a breath apart. The heat from his body swirled around her like a storm wind, but she did not falter. The air between them shimmered, not in violence, but in the tension between what is and what might still be. "You chose fire," she said gently, "because you believed that flame could erase your pain. But all fire truly does is reveal the shape of what it touches. It cannot destroy what you were. It can only hide it for a time. But even the longest night cannot make the stars cease to exist. It can only veil them." He raised his head then, and in his eyes, still pits of slow burning coals, there was something new. Not light, but longing. Not surrender, but sorrow. A sorrow so deep, so ancient, it felt like the lament of a mountain for its own erosion. "I am tired," he said. "So tired, Elenwë, of war, of hate, of the endless gnawing inside me that tells me to consume, to destroy, to conquer, to be the shadow, because the light hurts too much to look upon." She nodded, and a tear slid silently down her cheek. Not out of pity, but in communion. "Then let it hurt," she whispered. "Let it burn, but do not turn from it. Let it cleanse instead of consume. Let the fire remember what it was made for." He lowered his lash, and for a moment, just one, his flames dimmed, not to extinction, but to something softer, something almost like the glow of a forge, waiting to be rekindled by purpose, not rage. And then the wind changed. Far behind them, across the battlefield, where time had warped and form had shattered, a horn sounded. Not the trumpet of victory, nor the clarion call of vengeance. It was deeper, older, a note carved in sorrow, carried by those of the Valar who mourned what had become necessary. It was a summons, not to fight, but to choose. Gothmog looked to Elenwë one final time, and in that gaze was everything he had never said. Every question he had never dared ask, every fragment of music he had once known, before silence became his only song. "I do not know if I can be more than what I have become," he said. And she answered softly, her voice like wind passing through a grove where no tree had grown for centuries. "Then begin by being less." And in the shadow of Utumno, the first flame knelt. The act of kneeling was not one of defeat, nor even of surrender, but of release. The slow and aching unraveling of a tension held for so long that it had become indistinguishable from the very sinews of being. When Gothmog bowed his great head, when the flaming lash slackened from his grip and vanished into the cinders underfoot, it was not a warrior renouncing his weapon. It was a memory relinquishing its torment, a fire laying down its wrath to remember warmth. The motion did not echo across the field in sound. It moved like a tremor through the deep foundations of the earth. Subtle but undeniable, the kind of shift that ancient trees feel before a change in season, or that stars mark in silence across millennia of watchfulness. And the land, too, responded. The ground beneath them softened, not visibly, not yet, but with a change in texture, a loosening of the stone's grip upon itself, as though the soil had remembered that it once knew growth. The ash-laden air thinned slightly, not enough to clear the sky or unveil the sun, but enough for breath to be taken without strain, without the weight of smoke that had for so long choked out even the memory of wind. The clouds above held, but their pressure eased, and from the horizon a thread of pale gold began to shimmer, faint, as delicate as the filament of a spider's web in the dark, but undeniably real. Then we watched him, and in her gaze there was no triumph. There was only quiet reverence, the kind one holds before the blooming of a rare and fragile flower at the end of a long, harsh winter. She did not speak, not yet. For some moments are too holy for interruption, and she understood, as one who had carried the weight of remembrance for ages, that the heart must learn to speak its own name again before it can listen to another. When Gothmog did rise, not to stand, but to sit, folded into himself upon the soot-warmed ground, it was with the slowness of one awakening from an illness, blinking at the memory of clarity through the fog of long torment. His fire still glowed, but it was no longer an inferno. It flickered at the edges of him, a mantle of embers rather than a roar. He seemed smaller, though no less mighty, like a volcano stilled after centuries of rage, its form unchanged, but its purpose uncertain. He looked not at her, but at his own hands, which had long since ceased to resemble those of a Maia. They were claws now, thick and dark, wreathed in scorched veins of gold and flame. Yet in them he saw not power, but weight, not strength, but fatigue. And as he spoke, his voice was a rasp that echoed not through the air, but inward, like the last note of a hymn sung beneath ruined arches. "I do not know who I am," he said. "Not truly. I have worn the shape of wrath for so long that the silence beneath it feels foreign. I have become the echo of my own rage, repeated until the meaning of the first cry is lost. And now, sitting here, I am not certain there is anything beneath it, only knelt beside him, not close enough to crowd him, but near enough that her presence could be felt as a constant and quiet flame, gentle in its warmth, steady in its rhythm. "That uncertainty," she said, her voice low and soft as twilight rain, "is the first breath of healing. You were never meant to be a shape. You were not born to burn." Gothmog. None of us were born to embody a single song forever. We were meant to change, to grieve, to return. What you feel now is not the absence of self. It is the rediscovery of silence. He turned toward her then, and in his eyes lived a question not yet formed. She saw it and answered before he could speak. "I do not mean silence as negation," she said. "I mean the kind of silence that comes before music begins again. The breath the singer takes, the hush before the first chord. You were never unmade. You were unheard, and now perhaps you may begin again." He closed his eyes. "I do not know how," he whispered. "I only know destruction. I have no voice left for song." Elenwë's hand reached out, and for the first time she touched him. Not in command, nor to guide, but as one soul reaches across the chasm to another. Her fingers brushed the edge of his flame, and it did not sear her. It bowed beneath her skin, sighing like smoke that remembered sky. "Then speak," she said. "Not in song, not yet. But speak as you are. Tell me what the silence feels like." And he did. He spoke not as the Lord of Balrogs, not as the flame of wrath, but as a being lost in seeking the shape of his own soul. He told her of the first time he felt the sting of envy, the moment he looked upon the light of the trees and felt not wonder, but a hunger to possess what he could not create. He spoke of Melor's voice in the dark, offering not truth, but certainty, and how certainty for those who fear their own doubt can feel like love. He spoke of battles fought not in glory, but in exhaustion, of being surrounded always by the roar of others' commands, and never once by the quiet of his own thoughts. And he spoke of fire, not the noble flame of the forge, nor the guiding light of stars, but fire as affliction, fire as the only language left to a being who had forgotten how to cry. And Alan listened. She did not interrupt. She did not correct. She let him unravel his story as a weaver might unpick a tapestry, not to discard it, but to find the thread that had begun it all. And when he fell silent, not in shame, but in the completion of something sacred, she reached into the satchel at her side and withdrew a small, round stone. It was smooth, unmarked, pale as moonlight, but within it glowed the faintest green, like a seed waiting in the heart of winter for the memory of spring. "This is for you," she said. "Not because you are forgiven, nor because you are redeemed, but because you have begun." He took it with both hands, and something in the land sighed. A deeper tremor this time, not of fear, not of collapse, but of release. Across the fields, some of the Balrogs hesitated, others vanished. The fire in their eyes wavered, and far within Utumno, in chambers where light had never dared to tread, the darkness stirred, not in fury, but in caution. For the shadow now knew one of its fires had begun to remember light, and memory, as always, was the first act of rebellion. And so the final act of the Siege of Utumno did not begin with a charge, nor with the clash of steel against stone, nor with the battle cries of celestial hosts shaking the firmament. It began instead with a stillness, a pause so deep and wide that it seemed to stretch the world across the span of a breath, a sacred silence drawn like a veil across the battlefield, as if Arda herself had closed her eyes. It was a silence shaped by many things, the hush of recognition between old enemies, the intake of breath before a word long held is finally spoken. The kind of silence that comes when time slows and meaning, not motion, becomes the only thing that matters. Far above, the sky had begun to bleed. Not in crimson or fire, but in soft shades of blue and violet, touched faintly with gold. The clouds that had for so long hung low like a shroud began to stir, their edges unraveling like threads released from a loom. There was no sun, but a diffuse light, gentle and uncertain, slipped through the veil, gilding the tips of ruined stone and scorched banners, casting shadows that no longer reached so far or fell so heavily. It was the kind of light one sees in the hours before dawn, not yet triumphant, but persistent, like a promise whispered by the world to itself, that not all darkness is endless, and not all endings are ruin. Elenwë stood at the edge of the caldera, a vast circle of scorched ground where fire had once ruled, where fury had walked in the shape of a being too immense for pity. Now that space was quiet. The ashes had settled, the wind no longer screamed, and in the very center sat Gotham. No longer the flame of wrath, but something smaller, more wounded, more real. Around him lay the remnants of what had been, a burned-out standard bearing the ancient sigil of fire unchained, a half-melted helm once worn by a creature who believed invincibility and isolation were the same thing. And now, beside them, the pale stone Elenwë had given him, glowing softly in his palm, like the last memory of a gentler world. She descended toward him slowly, each footfall pressing into the ash with the care of one who walks not on ground, but on memory. The wind carried with it a new scent, faint traces of turned soil, of clean water not yet spilled, of leaves that had not grown but might. Someday, even the bones of the earth beneath her feet, long deadened by corruption, felt different, less brittle, more listening, as though waiting again to feel the weight of roots. As she reached him, Gothmog did not look up immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the stone, and when he finally spoke, it was with a voice no longer carved from flame, but from something gentler, weathered wood, perhaps, or wind-mouthed stone. His words were slow, not because he struggled to find them, but because he had learned the gravity of speech when it is not wielded as weapon, but as offering. "This place," he said, not lifting his eyes, "was made to last forever. Utumno was shaped not as a fortress, but as a wound, a scar on the world that could never heal because it was built on the belief that what is broken must remain so. That pain must be preserved to remain powerful. I see that now, and I see that I am part of that belief. I have been its voice, its shape." Elenwë knelt beside him, her hands resting quietly in her lap, her eyes on the light breaking through the sky rather than on his face. She did not interrupt. His voice was the one that needed space now, for what he said was not confession, but metamorphosis. "I thought," he continued, "that to become more than what I feared, I had to shed everything that made me feel. That pain was a weakness. That longing was a crack in my armor. I thought if I burned away the gentler parts of myself, I would become whole. But fire does not make one whole. It only consumes. And when it consumes everything, there is nothing left to stand upon. He paused, and a slow breath moved through him, not a sigh of weariness, but one of recognition. "I do not want to consume anymore," he said. "I want to remember. I want to build again, not in defiance of what I was, but in honor of what I once hoped to be." Elenwë turned her gaze to him, and for the first time since he had stepped from the gates of Utumno, she smiled fully. Not the soft, sorrowed smile of compassion, but one touched with joy, quiet and restrained, but real. "You are not alone in that hope," she said, "and the earth remembers the ones who choose to heal it." At that, Gothmog finally stood. His towering form, though still marked by the remnants of fire, no longer radiated fear. He was not small. He would never be small. But he had ceased to be monstrous. The flame that lingered around him curled like the warmth of a hearth, no longer a conflagration, but a glow. He looked down into the pit of Utumno, into the yawning dark that had once been his temple, his fortress, his crucible, and he breathed out a single word: "No more." And the ground answered, not with earthquake or collapse, but with a low, sonorous sound, as though the very bones of the world sighed in relief. The gates of Utumno, which had stood open for ages untold, began to close, not with violence, but with solemnity, like a book finally finding its end, its last page written with care. The stone shifted not with destruction, but with dignity. The darkness within did not scream. It simply receded, folding into itself like smoke drawn back into a vessel, sealed not by force, but by forgiveness. All across the battlefield, a hush fell. The host of the Valar paused, weapons lowering as one by one their eyes turned toward the source of the shift. Even the remaining Balrogs, those who had yet to fall or flee, stood in uneasy silence. One among them, a being of blue neck flame, who had once borne a crown of jagged onyx, looked to Gothmog and felt for the first time the stirrings of a thought untainted by command. What if we were more than fire? Elenwë and Gothmog turned together and began to walk, not away from the battlefield, not toward victory, but toward a place that had no name yet, a place that would be built not of ash, but of earth, not of fear, but of memory. And the sky opened just a little more. A shaft of gold fell across the land, striking the stone in Gothmog's hand. It flared briefly, a single brilliant green flash, and then the first flower bloomed where his foot fell. Small, pale, new, but real. And in the hush that followed, in that first breath of a world learning to sing again, Elenwë whispered, "It begins."